I closed my bank account, I left everything behind to go and to do this round the world journey overland without money. This is a map I took before I left France in September 2012. I was like marked the whole like overland path. I've had people like casting spells at me. It can be done. And Chacahua is so strong, the energy as a channel, that it facilitates this process. Because again, magic works when we break down time and space. Well, I had my own experiences with Psilocybin mushrooms. I felt I could compare it with mild LSD experiences for a while. Until this point of experiencing a mushroom called derrumbe, and one of my strongest psychedelic sacred experiences. And from there, I started connecting and say, okay, I can use it differently.
In today's video, we will be talking to Nicolas Genna. Nicko is a Reiki master, a yoga instructor, and an energy healer. He also works with psilocybin mushrooms in combination with these skills to create a very unique type of therapy for physical and emotional healing. Nicko also happens to be an old friend of mine, in which I met 8 years ago during my first world trip to northern India. He became a close friend after an epic trekking adventure of a lifetime up there in the Himalayas. Back then, he was a man that decided to travel the entire world overland and without any money. His story introduced me to a new perspective about the world's governments and corporate systems. Eventually, it led me into investigating into the true nature of reality itself. 8 years later, Nicko has completed his journey going around the world, from Europe to Asia to North America, and all the way down to South America. He now has written a book created from his travel diaries named The 5 Phases of Death. It details not only his journey around the world, but also his philosophy in life, spirituality, science, and of course, psychedelics and death. Nicko is not only a world traveler and an energy healer, but has had many lives, from a professional basketball coach, a political activist, an English teacher, a professional mushroom picker, and an astrologist. He now lives in Chacahua, Mexico, a special place located inside a national park in the state of Oaxaca, a place that feels more isolated from the rest of the world. And it has an energy where it feels like it breaks time and space. It really is a place of magic. Nicko has been teaching and administering his therapy work in Chacahua quite some time now. And eventually he wants to build a healing and community center there. So without going any further, let's listen to the conversation with Nicko, and I hope you enjoy the interview. So I'm here with Nicko, a very amazing friend that I met in India around about 7 years ago. And throughout the years, I've come back and seen him because he's been a very special friend to me. 5 years ago in Mexico City, and then now in Chacahua. And I've seen your transform.
Another world.
Another world.
Another world, Mexico City and Chacahua. I don't even know if I'd be able to live again in Mexico City. Well, you've been to my old flats there, mm-hmm. And it was Coyoacan, you know, like this arty, lovely place of life. It's like a village in the city where you have the massive pollution and stuff, but you don't feel like in too much in the city center. So it was doable, but like, yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a ride since we last saw each other.
Yeah, it has been
for both of us. It's been a ride for both of us.
We've both grown beards as well.
That's exactly the point. And more. So what does it mean?
What does it mean now? Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the changes I've seen is in the therapeutic work that you're doing right now here in Chacahua. So I wanted to know basically more about that, like why Chacahua and why this work that you're doing right here, right now.
I'm going to try to make it as concise as possible, but because it's two different points. So let's therapy first. therapy first because, through my university curriculum, I was connected with medicine and understanding the body, how it works. But as well as I had this fantastic curriculum, and many people got lost because it was too much, too diverse. It was as much as anatomy, as physiology or biomechanics, as psychology, sociology, anthropology, and stuff like that. So I think it was a real school of life, because then you just connect with whatever you want, and you have the option. But of course, in such a dogmatic society where you have to put in a box, most people they didn't find their way. But like, it started like that with Western medicine. Shortly, first travel Thailand, a Thai massage course, and so I had this connection. And then basically Thai massage is already meridians, energy meridians, and so it connects little by little. And so traveling has been the spirit in the equation, or the balance between spirit and science. Because science in the West, we have it. It's like what we talked about, the difference between being born in the Himalayas or in the West. But like, yeah, so it was this evolution of like 20 years university, almost 20 years from university, and also having official qualifications, and through basketball training, being able to work with physiotherapists and develop my own physical preparation, blah, blah, nutrition. So it was like that, but I had to find my way to be more open-minded and to gather more knowledge and wisdom about it. So then I connected with anything related to ancestral civilizations, and connecting also to the Eastern philosophies and Chinese medicine. But then again, the thing is, like, the psychedelic and sacred, experiences, sacred plant, came along the way. Like, for instance, just after you came in 2015, it had to be March or April, but I had this Iranian friend who came, Bobak, with whom I lived in Amsterdam. It's a long story. He was one of my former students when I was teaching English. Anyway, and basically, he also came to Mexico, also came to Chacahua. And at that time, I had been in Mexico for like almost 6 months, and I had never tried peyote. It never come to me, and that's fine, because I think it shouldn't be forced. But then my friend came, he asked me the same question: have you tried peyote? It's something that usually people do in Mexico. And I said, no, the same thing. No, it's been like a few months, it hasn't come to me. Or when it came to me, I didn't feel like it, the people, the setting. And an hour after, at that very moment, a friend of mine called me, Mexican friend, which I'd met in Chacahua when I'd arrived the first time, and basically she told me, oh, do you want to come to a cacao ceremony, a peyote ceremony, right, on Friday? So it was like 2 days before, something was very spontaneous. And I did, and I was with my friend. So I think for me, psychedelic is sacred. Like, sacred experience, as a spiritual tool, a growth tool, it's changed a lot. And one of the turning points was just after you left. Also, when you came here, it was a transition point. But like, then as we talked about before, but like, to summarize quickly for people who haven't heard, it's like I denied that ability to heal people for years, almost my whole life. I don't want to be labeled. As a healer, as a shaman, I think we all are, because we all have the same potential. So for me, it was very hard to accept the idea of like, okay, why would I do that? Because for me, because it's something amazing. And yet there are different paths and different functions for each and every one of us. But for me, it was healing people. So it was a long-term process to accept it, because basically I had to accept that if I heal others, I'm going to heal myself. So I have to be emotionally honest with myself and be aware of this process. Because otherwise it wouldn't work. It has to be a mutual energy exchange and work. That's the law of the universe. And this is not something so easy to do. It's worthwhile, but it's not easy. So when I first came to Chacahua, first live on this land behind Lia del Mar, on my own, like 5 months camping with a whale, while my friend, the owners, had still the restaurant on the beach, because there was nothing here. Well, basically, I started connecting all these tools. Okay, I say, I know medicine, I know the body, I know how it works, but how can I connect it without separating? Because you have a Western doctor, you have a Chinese doctor, you have a Reiki practitioner. How astrology, how do we make it work together? That's what I'm interested in. So I started I had studied astrology. I was connecting with astronomy since age 12 somehow. And I studied more thoroughly and pragmatically, and I started reading astral charts for friends. And I started giving therapies, putting these tools together. And as I told you before as well, basically my practice today is different than 6 months ago. We're talking of 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was also my own process of, okay, I can do that, I can do it well, people are super happy, it changes their life. But I don't want money. It was all these resistances, which I worked on before, but again, for me, health and education should be free. Ultimately, we don't live in this perfect world, yet it's perfect as it is. And so I had to accept that, or understand and accept that money is energy. That was my process also when we met last time. And that, okay, what matters is the intention. Why am I doing that? Okay, because I can do it. Why I can do it? Because I haven't said that. Because because I haven't done it so many times relatively. Anytime I was on a deep, profound journey as a portal or visiting world, again a shaman, but as everyone can do, and gathering information and sharing it with other people, debating it, whatever. I had to face this situation in which I believe I wasn't manifesting at the time, being aware of it, but somehow I was manifesting to make me accept that I had to follow this path. That basically I had to look after people when they were scared not to come back, because I wasn't scared. I had faith in the process, or when they somehow, and it was meant to be this way. So all this process has led me to the point of okay, I went 2 years and a half to Central and South America. I've kept on learning. I became a Reiki master. So okay, I came back to Chacahua 7 months ago. I was ready, and it's part of the beautiful, of course challenging, but somehow beautiful process of the pandemic, of coming to this point of coming back to Chacahua earlier than what I thought in the first place, organizing my first music and holistic workshop festival, and first of this kind in Chacahua for the solstice in December, which in brackets was the closest point. The solstice, of course, was thought of and planned, but the closest point of this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction wasn't. All the way to growing in the last 6 months since I officially started working. Again, it's a big word, sharing my passion and also getting money as energy. I could define it this way with others. Chacahua.
Yeah.
We're doing well. Because it was it was a 5 minute kind of thing, and and okay. The second thing was Chacahua. Why Chacahua? Because I was on my way from Alaska overland on this round the world journey where we met in India as well in some ways, all the way to Japan, and then it was meant to be overland overseas, part of my acceptance process. Went to Alaska, and I wanted to go from the northernmost point of Alaska to the bottom tip of South America. And this is what I did, and it's so synchronistic that the pandemic got me stuck somehow, although it's also part of what I manifested in the Magellan Strait and the very end of the world in the Tierra del Fuego.
Yeah, but I also wanted to say it was, for those people that don't know, you've traveled the world extensively for how long before getting to this point here?
Well, in total, for almost 20 years, but I had only one cycle in France for 4 years. When I came back from these 2 years and a half in New Zealand, Australia, and all the way to having this a year of transition in Amsterdam before I left in September 2012 and never came back to France. It wasn't planned to be that long. Now it's already 8 years and a half or something. But it was surely meant to happen this way. So you can see the map. You may not see much on your screen, but this is a map I took before I left France in September 2012. I was like marked the whole like overland path, which is again connected with the idea that I was a political activist for 1 year in Amsterdam, and in my own acceptance or breaking down my resistances at the time, I closed my bank accounts. I left everything behind to go and to do this round the world journey overland without money. And I did a quarter of the group all the way to Dubai pretty much, and there's a lot of stories that if you're courageous enough, you may read in my book at some point, but some crazy stories, and which is actually why I was writing my diaries, my journals, because I was traveling alone most of the time, and it was around the world journey overland without money, proving that everything was possible. When I met you in India, I was shifting cycles, because I met Anastasia, and basically it was the very point where I started using a bit of money.
Right.
It's interesting.
Well, actually, you were the first person that got me to think about money in a different way like that. That how is that possible? So you shifted a little bit of that consciousness in me. So in saying, coming back to what you're saying about, you started to use a little bit more money over in India. Using
at all. I mean, in India, in a sense that my transition to make my own acceptance process was that, because when I started, it was a round world journey, right? So I knew I was going to cross borders and stuff. I had these $400 which I had taken in case, but I didn't want to use them before India. That's exactly what I did, because of the desert, because I didn't want to get stuck in Europe, and anyway. But I didn't use it all the same. Maybe it was part of my mind process to have this money, because this is what I had left anyway, so I took it. But it was clear that I wanted to do a round the world journey without money, and I did it like from France all the way to Dubai, and it feels surreal, all the way to busking with my guitar on the streets in Dubai, hidden, because it was illegal to pay myself like a plane ticket because I couldn't cross Pakistan overland. So I had, for me, it sounds obvious that, okay, you go with the flow. But like at that moment, I mean, like it changed many things in my journey. So India was like 4 months of working for this NGO, because it made sense to me as a transition. So it was like traveling without money, and then I would still travel India and enjoy it, like traveling in sustainable projects and teaching sustainability, blah, blah, in places lost in the middle of nowhere, having the local experience and transiting to this point of, okay, now I'm going to Nepal, that's my choice. I think I'm going north. I think Mongolia and Siberia, kind of once in a lifetime opportunity, maybe, all the way to Alaska. At some point I was thinking of crossing the Bering Strait in winter by ski. I mean, it was great. At the time it was really crazy. I mean, the whole thing, well, it can be very long, but that was the idea that brought me to Mexico, falling in love with Mexico, with the people, the culture, again, like this strong, still very modernized, and but still influenced by the West, but still super connected to its ancestral culture. And Chacahua was the cherry on the cake. Okay. It was like, okay, after a few days, and it was nothing around, even wild and stuff, I was like, wow, I've traveled so much, and I've never had that feeling of, I could stay here, maybe leave, I don't know, but I was staying for a few months. I'd felt that a little with Broom, I'd done it, but it was a little different. But yeah, I can stay here, and I did. I lived again alone with my tent, and for 5 months, and like a lost Robinson Crusoe on its island, all the way to developing projects. Was cycles at the time. Was going also back to Canada and the States to work there, and little by little. And then the process of loving Chacahua, having Chacahua loving me. Chacahua challenges you. It's this massive, because it's massive like energy vortex. Again, if it's like this bubble, like this almost dimensional shift, you have no COVID. It's a different life. I mean, like, and I'm not going to say it's normal because I don't like this word somehow, in the sense that you can do whatever you want as long as you don't bother people, you respect their space, and it's a free world.
And there's no masks here. You can just walk anywhere you want to
absolutely.
go into. Yeah, so it's like, feels like it's cut off from. Cut off is probably not the right answer, but from the rest of the world, there is this sort of like magical bubble here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only stress that you get here is the stress which is brought by other people, who comes with this energy and takes maybe a couple of days or something to settle, because Chacahua also does that. But like in a year, more than a year now, you have no official case of COVID, and people are coming and going all the time. So they closed the village for 3 months last year during the rainy season. I wasn't there here. I arrived late in August. And the funny thing is, like, I don't know when it was, maybe November or something, they were about to close the beaches and stuff in Puerto Escondido, La Zicatela, very touristy, Mazunte, and all this. And so here they try to implement the mask. But like basically, what happened is like it worked for half a day, and then no one put their mask.
Right.
So it was funny. No, I mean, it cannot work this way here, because again, it's conditioning. People, most people don't have television, they don't watch, don't have this brainwashing of seeing like numbers of dead people, like, oh, it's in every mouth. So again, if you talk of something all the time, of course you're going to manifest it.
Yes, of course. It's always there, right?
Energy, yeah, and it's energy coming out of your mouth. I mean, it's manifesting. If you talk about getting sick or not getting sick, or these people getting sick, and all the time, for sure you're going to manifest it. Mm-hmm. And here it doesn't happen, because it's all about connecting with nature, the elements.
And with Chacahua, you were saying that, I mean, this place first off has a big Afro-Mexican community. Is that correct?
Yeah, true. It's the only one in Mexico.
But also, what comes with that? You're talking about the witchcraft as well.
That's shortly after I first arrived in Chacahua. I had felt, debated about spirits and bad spirits, and again, for me, it was everything love and beautiful, and it was very hard for my heart, I guess, like to conceive of bad spirits, and like, and yet it never felt so real when I had my own experience. At the time, I was very much into Carlos Castaneda, as I told you, and doing the Pases Mágicos, and getting into that because I had some indirect experiences with that. But long story cut short, I mean, like, I've had my own experience about understanding feeling that it's a place of witchcraft, because there is something surreal to it. There is, I mean, officially, well, it is known that you have people that do incantations in the rocks on the other side. You have stories, locals, or many locals have stories of spirits and ghosts and entities protecting the place. Mm-hmm. Visions, and we're not talking about like psychedelic experiences at all. But basically, anyway, beyond all these stories, the idea that I had my own experience, I'm not going to tell the whole story, it would be too long, but I've had people like casting spells at me. It can be done, and Chacahua is so strong, the energy as a channel, that it facilitates this process, because again, magic works when we break we break down time and space. So it gets to these kind of things where it's another world, another dimension. And again, Chacahua is this culture. Witchcraft, because you have this strong African background, and with voodoo, and it's no secret here that You have lots of brujas, I mean, really people with really dark. We are talking about this darkness to Mexico, to Chacahua. And again, it doesn't have to be negative. We have light, we have darkness, same and equal amount. But like, again, Mexico and especially Chacahua is this kind of places, they make you work on the shadows. And it's deep, and magic is part of the process. Well, we all strive, I mean, we all live for magic. I mean, when we were kids, and so we don't want to lose focus on the idea to see the world through the eyes of a child. We shouldn't lose the magic to life. And magic is, well, basically, you also have, okay, for me, the two different things. You have people casting spells, and you have magic also can be, you know, witchcraft can be working with plants and stuff. I mean, or shamanism doesn't have to be so far-fetched. But here you have a very special, profound, dark energy in Chacahua. I mean, dark means light, means the same amount. If you overcome, if you face your own darkness in the end, well, Chacahua supports you with this amazing equal amount of light.
Wow.
And
the two sides are here are very balanced with one another.
It can be, depends on how to work on the mind, because Chacahua is since it breaks time and space, or the perception, we talk about it later, of like also the moon, the sun living with that. Well, basically, it also breaks the mind, because all about time and space. Well, anyway. But like basically, from that moment, you're more perceptive, you're more intuitive, and I'm not saying it's something necessarily easy, but again, worthwhile to connect with this energy, since we channel all the time.
So one of the medicines you're talking about, right, to connect to those energies, you also work with psilocybin mushrooms, with magic mushrooms. Do you want to tell me more about your therapy with that?
Interestingly enough, it's been a few years, I mean, about the process of between thinking that would be or feeling it would be not the right thing to do, but my right thing to do. Sorry. And, well, I had my own experiences with psilocybin mushrooms. Interestingly enough, you have different things in psilocybin, and also the stuff you get in Amsterdam, or like a more cheesy stuff, or not as potent, or not, because again, the product is going to take the energy of the people who deal with it, or the intention of the product. So it's something touristy, like in Amsterdam, in tourist shops. I mean, it was different, the energy. I felt I could compare it with mild LSD experiences for a while, until these points of experiencing a mushroom called derrumbe in San Jose. You have two types of super special endemic mushrooms in the Sierra. San Jose El Pacifico, it's derrumbe and maestro. Two psilocybin mushrooms, and I had my strongest mushroom experience, and one of my strongest psychedelic sacred experiences with these derrumbe mushrooms. And from there, I started connecting and say, okay, I can use it differently. We know that mushrooms can be used to cure depression and anxiety. I mean, like, we know some uses been studied and stuff. So how do we make it something different, but meaningful and efficient? And naturally, through my process of accepting and sharing my own therapies, I came to the point of, okay, why not trying microdosing? So I got interested. That was also 3-4 years ago. I stayed in a mushroom community in Guatemala 4 years ago, learning. So studying mushrooms. I was picking mushrooms, not psychedelic mushrooms, which are also edible, but like edibles. It's all edible mushrooms, you know. But like in Canada, you know, I was going English teacher. I wanted like to go out of the structure, conventional structure, Anyway, more and more interested because you have lots of mushrooms which are not psychedelic mushrooms and which have amazing uses. So to the point of like studying how mushroom can eat plastic, to recycle plastic, or like eat like cigarette butts. So it was getting into that like science and spirit. So it was a good match. I liked it. Anyway, all the way to this point, it started for the first time probably 2 months ago. I had thought about it, like I've done 5 mushroom therapies up to date, because it's not a whole journey. I mean, you know, like the classic 3 gram, I mean 3 to 5 for more intense experiences. But like, it's not like, what I like with microdosing is like short term, you go like 2-3 weeks, you go 2 days on, 1 day off, or 1 day on, 1 day off, which I'd rather recommend to start with. And you go 0.1, 0.15 grams, and then you see how it works, how you feel, because really you don't feel it, but it still enhances the thing as well.
Yeah. That's what I found.
And me too. But like this time I felt it should have to be, it would have to be something different. A bit deeper, but not going the whole journey, because it's a responsibility. You know, I've had some people, it was the first time, so you had to be mild, and otherwise I have to spend 8 hours with a person to initiate. Well, anyway. Although it was just 1 therapy a day, because I knew it was a lot of energy and it's very profound. So I tapped into like between 0.5 and 1 gram. And it's been interesting. So it started with a very special person who has the Crohn's disease.
The Crohn's disease, what's that?
Well, it's a disease that affects your nervous system, endocrine system. You can get arthritis super young, and like a crisis of arthritis, of like kind of paralysis moment. And this woman, she was diagnosed with the Crohn's disease at age 7. So I believe in the psychosomatics, also through quantum physics, of like the power of thoughts and feelings and emotions, how it affects our body, that everything we manifest here, basically it's part of what we manifest here. And through that I say, okay, we have this emotional charge. That's what I do in my work. I mean, basically I've learned how to read the back, to connect all these tools, and to connect the masculine side of the body, the feminine side of the body, and then basically to say, okay, this can be connecting with more like masculine, feminine, but like deep subconscious emotions through what I found through the body, through acupuncture and acupressure points, as much as the posture, you know, like the plexus, the heart, the way subconsciously, again, how we expose to the world, self-confidence, self-esteem, but also repression. I mean, like how we repressed emotionally in this society, so we tend to close, or like material possession, to kind of Gollum, you know, you protect. So you close in, and like it gives a lot of physical issues. But like understanding that everything is emotional to the point that it can be karmic, that I believe in reincarnation, not necessarily as human. I believe in karma, and that when you have such disease at 7 years old, it cannot be can be from some emotional charge, but it's very unlikely. I mean, like so young to manifest that. So it has to come from somewhere, something else. So I said, okay, why not using mushrooms to do some regression? I work with hypnosis as well, through the deep state of relaxation of the therapies. But sometimes with mushrooms we can speak and like exchange and go deeper down the rabbit hole and try to explore maybe other lives and see what we can bring to this physical plane, to release it and heal it and let it go. That's what the whole thing. So it differs from the classic mushroom study, to the point where I'd like to do this holistic medicine center in Chacahua. Before this year, we see how I can manifest it, but it's going to happen. I'm going to manifest it. I know it's the way somehow. I have to follow. And working, like I've been talking with doctors and stuff, I mean, to study, again, magnetic resonance is very expensive, but like study the brain and see how we can evolve. I believe in telepathy, empathy. Again, we get into this thing, I don't want to make it too long, but like words are loaded with prejudices and judgment, and we live in a machist society. We want to change that without falling into feminism either. It has to be humanism, the middle way. And yet we still use these words, they're loaded. And I believe if we limit the use without thinking of trying to invent an Esperanto and like a union language, Bebo, so it hasn't worked. So like making something more like, to limit without limitations, but like not to use so many words, like develop the brain, the true potential of the brain, and trying to develop telepathy, seeing the patterns, how it works, working with kids, working with adults, I don't know. Another bracket, I mean, kids are fundamental with the seed and stuff. Everyone says that, like, seeds, I mean, we don't know how they're going to germinate, but I mean, the kids, it's the future. The future doesn't exist. So, I mean, I love working with adults as well because they're the present. Right now, we can already change. And we know the thing we can change is ourselves. And only then can we change the collective through our energies. But that's the mushroom progress until now. And we see.
Disculpa, ¿no tendrás un fuego porque ando?
Sí, te voy a dar un fuego, vecino querido.
So, excuse me for that. We got interrupted by Nicko's neighbor. By the way, is that what we call you now still? Or because Nicko. I know Nicko is a label, right? But
yeah, I've thought of that.
Do you have a different name now?
I've had my process. No, because I think, for years I didn't connect to Nicolas, like how you say it in French. And interestingly enough, as I got to Spanish-speaking countries or traveled and visited, well, basically, I heard the sound, the vibration. Again, it's always sound, no? It was Nicolas. And basically, the stress of the word was different. And it had a different vibe to me. So I started liking my name also through Spanish. Cannot tell you if it was exactly Mexico or further south, but still. So Mexico was part of it because the plan was like to learn Spanish before traveling Central and South America. Right. Mexico. But anyway, Nicko, because all my friends and blood family back in France, they used to call me like that naturally. Or I mean, for all the Nicolas or Nicolases, basically it's a normal short. But when I was living in Japan, I figured out that Nicko is like smile. And I love smile and glance in people, but like smile I think is a very important part of the personality or the energy. And so yeah, it was, oh, that's cool. So Nicko, when I changed for K, well, it doesn't matter, because it was with K in Japanese. But like in the end, I learned a bit like Chris McClendis is Into the Wild. Like things have to be called by their real name. I think there is a reason the soul has chosen to come back or back to this physical plane, and for this reason that we tend to not know most of the time, but it's part of the process, of the energy process of having this name. So it has to be. I've never been over fond of like changing my name to an Hindu god name or stuff like that. I think I have this name for a reason, so I have to vibrate to readjust maybe, and I feel totally fine. So people call me Nicko. Well, a couple of locals like doctor or something. But like Nicko is okay.
Yeah.
I've thought of it. I would change my name, but why?
Why is that? Yeah. Well, the other thing that we've changed is also our background. So we didn't actually reiterate that, but this is Chacahua.
Yeah, right, we changed.
We changed the actual
We've changed the
background.
background.
And we're out here at the beach. We're in front of Nicko's place, his place where he does his therapeutic healing. And it's magical.
Yeah, that's the very view for which I fell in love with Chacahua also in the first place. And there is a very special, even the feng shui of the whole bay, the geometry of it is very special from this angle. Because you almost have like a perfect 90-degree angle. You have this wonderful 15-kilometer stretch of wild sand, because again now it's kind of growing here and there, but like 3-4 years ago it was absolutely nothing but the pueblo, the village. And there is something very special even to Cerro Hermoso, this hill there. It feels like the part of the soul of Chacahua, which is where you arrive when you get with the truck, with the first lancha, the boat. You get, and then the truck journeys all along the road is parallel to the beach.
Yeah.
You come along from there.
And there's a power here, you can feel it. I mean, you see it in the waves too.
Yeah. Pacific Ocean is very powerful, especially South Pacific. Again, I think I told you, without reading anything or anyone telling me or suggesting whatever, sharing an experience, here in Chacahua is where I started asking for permission. I think I told you yesterday, to enter the water and then to thank for guidance and protection when I come out. And it feels very natural. Again, it's very powerful.
That feels like...
And it's nothing to with fear. I feel like a super good swimmer. I've done swimming. I mean, it feels like a respect, like an entity of the element. Yeah.
Well, back in Australia, the Aboriginal people do that to the land.
Yeah, it makes
They
sense.
respect the land. It's so...
They bless the land.
Yeah. And so living in a place like this, you must also experience life in a way in which you talk about the cycles as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, I somehow started astronomy, studying, even teaching. I was a bit of a geek when I was a teenager, but when I was super young, and it was always there. It's something we always have above us most of the time. And personally, it's changed my perception of the world, because not just knowing the names of the stars or the constellations and stuff, it's about understanding everything is two-dimensional in our society. So it teaches us to see in distance, to train the brain, which never been trained or conditioned to that, to infinity of time and space, and which connects us with something which is hardly conceivable as well for the brain, as it's been trained since birth, is infinity of immortality. I mean, like, because it's time. Why would we have something finite or something which is inherently infinite? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So it has to be, astronomy is all this existential stuff that most people spend their life to try to figure out. And even what is discussable, whether time would be a dimension, but if it is considered as the fourth dimension, again, you understand that we see like it was in the past, because, for example, Sirius, which is the brightest star of the skies, we talked about, like this Sirius A and B thing, well, it's 26 light years away. So we see it, the light takes 26 years to come to us, so we see it as it was 26 years ago.
26 years ago.
And so it changes completely, like and it connects a lot with quantum physics and stuff. So here, when I came here, I was traveling from Alaska and I was emotionally exhausted. I hitchhiked and came most of the way. I had like amazing human sustainable community experiences, but for people who know, it can be emotionally draining as well, depending on the private space you can have. But I was tired and I came to Chacahua. Long story cut short, it seems like a long story, but it's the short version of it. I fell in love, we talked about that, and basically was contemplating this. He was contemplating the pelicans, the flow of the elements, and connecting with the heavens. And again, I had this my whole life and taught astronomy and astrology, but like it's like living in a desert. However, we hardly ever live in a desert or spend like an extended period of time. Meaning here in Chacahua, if you stay here, it's flat almost, so you can totally observe the cycles of the moon and of the sun.
Wow, okay, right.
The sun, well, because we live with the sun. It even comes like in Europe to real estate, and it's part of, well, in a more ancestral way, it's more like living, waking up here, you connect with that. And it's a sunrise place, you have it there. It moves like 46 degrees according to the axis of the earth, and the furthest point to the right, December solstice in the water, you have 6 months in the ocean, and then it goes there in June for the solstice. So you can, beyond the light it gives you and the food and anything, you can go all the way to observe like how it moves. And well, if people feel it this way, that's okay. I don't mind being judged, but I'm not saying being a geek of observing the sun every day and see how. But according to physics, and about rotation, revolution of the Earth and stuff, well, okay, I believe physics is something we should spend more time on in the educational system. But the sun is moving a quarter of its diameter every day, and beyond that, because the sun, everyone can kind of understand that, it's the moon. The moon, I've had many people, I told you about, I say it again for people who haven't heard that, but basically I have many people in my therapies or appointments, they tell me, we talk about the moon at some point, and they say, but I didn't know before coming to Chacahua that the moon was moving and changing faces in the sky, and it's something here, we have it all the time. So this is so symbolic on how much distraction we have in our city life, daily life, work life, which I also come from, which I completely understand. But here you can observe the faces. Now you have the moon. Well, that the moon, for example, is moving more or less 13 degrees every day on the ecliptic. Well, because she has to do 360 degrees in 28 days, which is the number of the phases. Number of days, sorry. Because the orbit is 30 days. But we're not going to get into that now to make it too complicated. But so it's that. So the moon, you don't need the dates and the days, the weekdays anymore. I do it for my appointments. It doesn't matter. Because now what's important in the here and now is basically, okay, the moon is 5 days old because it's at this place in the sky. And it doesn't take an astronomer to understand that and to observe that. Then, of course, some people come and they party and they never see the moon and how it works. We have lots of people, they consciously or subconsciously attracted by that. And that's why I've developed these retreats and courses. Well, COVID has changed a bit shifted the process, but I've prepared some retreats and part of teaching, living with that, because it changes the perception of the world. It changes your connection with the cosmos. It humbles you because your place in the universe. You understand a bit more. And because the moon is emotions, it's the shortest cycles around us, right? You go in astrology, without getting into details, you have shorter and longer cycles according to the revolution of each orbit of natural satellites like moons or planets around the sun. Moons around planets and planets around the sun. And we made of more or less 70% of water. We know what the moon is doing to the tides, to the oceans. And the moon is ruling our emotions. So basically, if you start understanding the moon is water, it's it's ruling Cancer, the sign. But again, without getting into too many details, the idea is it incarnates, represents our emotional fluctuations. And I'm not just talking, I'm convinced, I've always been convinced that the menstrual cycles, women's cycles, which are well felt super sacred, which is perverted in society. Again, it should be taught as something sacred and not something it's bad and stuff like it is a lot, directly and indirectly. I'm convinced the 28-day cycle is connecting with the moon. You have many women who are connected with full moon and new moon with their cycles. But beyond that, that it's completely ruling our emotional cycles as men as well, women and men. And we do have our moon as men. Of course, many men say, oh, I'm a man, I don't have that, I'm strong and stuff, society. Yeah. But like, I mean, it's the same. Beyond the sexual gender, we have the same balance, body, mind, spirit. And emotions are completely part of the equation. And the moon is what is teaching you to understand what element is transiting what sign. And again, it doesn't take years. It's just a bit of time you dedicate to that because you feel interested in yourself. And you understand the faces, how it moves and how it impacts your emotions.
Yeah. So in a place like this, I mean, it's such a great place to observe that.
Yeah.
And to be aligned with that as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with your essence, you can observe that every day, and you have these cycles all the way to the marine currents, how they flow, how they shift from south to north, what it brings. It's not random what I'm saying, it's connecting with bioluminescence, like with phytoplankton. Which is a massive attraction here. But then you have moon rises and sunrises and sunset, and because you can see both. It's a very special place. You don't have many places in the world where you can see both sunrise and sunset. Well, you have to go to the other beach, but because some kind of cape, you have both angles. So you live with that, especially in a sunrise place. It's funny because during years like traveling and stuff, I feel I was connecting with sunrise. But we don't live in many places, or we don't have the routine or the discipline or the routine to live with sunrise. But here you have to. I've been getting more aware is also in my process, like I wake up with the sun regardless of the time I go to sleep. Because it's healthy, it's your circadian cycles. In a big city now you don't have darkness anymore. I mean, it's not hard to understand, also far-fetched, that it's not natural. We've evolved this way and we accept it and stuff, but it's not natural.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. What I mean by it is we tend to be locked into it with the clock right away instead of the actual natural cycles. Yeah.
And as we said, Chacahua is a time and space break.
Space break, yeah.
You don't need, especially, I mean, again, I need to use it a little and find the balance. And we still belong to this physical plane. But like technically, as a tourist, for example, you come here, you have a few days, you leave, okay, that day and you leave another day. Again, you relate to that while traveling. But if you stay for an extended period of time, it no longer matters.
No longer matters, okay. Well, I was just speaking about that point. It is getting a little bit dark.
Yes, it is.
And the mosquitoes will come up.
Yes, and the wind, yes.
So we're going to talk about one last thing, which is your book.
Yeah, right.
Tell me about your book.
Okay.
And why first off, my curiosity is the name of the front cover, The 5 Phases of Death. Yeah.
The 5 Phases of Death, because it came to me super early, way before I had the structure of the book or the way I thought I would give it. Or do the layout, but basically it's a concept in psychology when one knows one is gonna die. Basically, he or she undergoes 5 emotional phases, which are shock, anger, bargaining or negotiation, depression and acceptance. And I've made an allegory, like a metaphor of these concepts through my own journey. Again, we've talked about it, having a conventional life, being a professional basketball coach, physical education, English teacher. Well, I tried many things. I had 50 lives, but anyway, more or less education and then more conventional and leaving everything behind, changing my life. And I felt like this allegory that anyone who would like change their lives drastically would undergo these phases, because it's all the way like to dismantle the mind. My process, but at the time, again, I thought I could break my mind or like make it go, because again, we get confused because we kind of have this information also from people who live in monasteries and stuff, but we weren't born in monasteries in the West. So basically the idea was like, okay, understanding, accepting the ego is, we can just change the routine or the neuronal patterns or the intention to use it as the best friend or the best enemy. But it was the whole process of, okay, understanding that everyone has to go towards acceptance. And we usually go through these stages. Again, it doesn't mean like when you go through depression, you're depressed. I've never felt depressed. But like the energy is lower. You have more maybe doubts in the human experience, which is okay. All the way to meeting you along the way. And the 5 phases of death and going, so the first book, the 5, because there are 3 other books now I'm trying to find. I'd love to find a publishing house. It's a long-term process. It's been a long-term process to write it, to publish it in this EPUB electronic version for ebooks. It has to be a long-term process. I'd love to to find a private company or something close in Puerto Escondido. Maybe do like a few printed copies. I'd love to offer to people. And anyway, I have 3 other books I could write. I have the content, the diaries. For now, it's 1 book. It goes time-wise from the time I left France, all the process that led me there. Why? Also when I was a political activist, when I was living in Amsterdam, studying economics, politics. Because again, we work for money our whole life, but like we never understand how it's created, how it circulates. Most people don't bother. Well, whoever are there, are making sure that basically we don't get too much or don't delve too much into the topic, but still we should be interested in that. And basically learning how to let go of my resistances, also with money actually. Understanding more about energy. I had started with quantum physics and stuff, getting more into psychedelic, sacred experiences. But the first part is like from September 2012 to sometime in 2014. When I left Nepal, I stayed this year in Kathmandu, and I went to Tibet. But again, without getting too much detail, even if I told the story, it's a very interesting book somehow. It's an 8-year process, but more than the emotional guideline or geographical guideline of my journey, there are lots of concepts. There's all my research, all my studies. So it's past, present, future. It's like I started now almost 9 years ago. I finished last year. Pandemic was part of the process. Again, intense, but like still beautiful, productive, and meaningful and necessary to get to the point of coming back to Mexico. Is no coincidence, of course, all interconnected, that I published the book officially in Chacahua.
Right.
When I came back, when I arrived here, when I came back. And this whole process of like having concepts about what I understood, what I studied, about the monetary system, about sustainability, about quantum physics, about the religious system. So you have the whole thing. Maybe you can say more about it, because you actually somehow started reading it, so you can kind of express this.
First off, it's a very long book, so I haven't read the whole thing.
No, I know, it's a long process, absolutely.
Yeah, but I've read the certain bits also that I've been part of as well in the Himalayas, and then I find it's a very interesting book also with the concepts, because you talk about your journeys, but also you talk about what is in your psychology, philosophy, the stars, everything like that. So there's a lot of depth in it.
It's connecting with the moment. It's connected with what led me, or energetically, it's all interconnected, right? So, yeah.
How can people find your book at the moment?
Well, for now, unfortunately, again, I'm hoping I can generate a bit of money to have a few copies here in Chacahua for people who want to visit me at some point.
But there's online version as well.
Yeah, there's an online version officially. It's on Gumroad, one of these platforms. We
can link
when you can have download link on my Instagram, which is Teacher on the Road altogether, _ download link, which I don't really remember. It's something like Gum.
We'll put a link. We'll put a link on the video. We'll put a link on the video. It'll be fine. Yeah,
it can be found online if you want to contribute. So what you would contribute, it's important to know, is this probably manifesting this holistic medicine center in Chacahua, and you're most welcome to visit, hopefully within a year or something.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, I'm very bad at marketing myself. but like I think it's
You
an
have help.
interesting book.
You have help.
I
Well, we're
think it's
doing it
cool.
right now.
Thank you. I'm super happy. It's so meaningful we're having this moment right now.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's
Whatever
likewise.
comes of it, I'm very grateful for sharing the moment with you.
Yes. Me too, brother. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this madness as well.